All right, let's jump right in. We're going to be digging into Joseph Murphy's The Power of Your Subconscious Mind. I mean, this book is a giant in the self-help world for a reason. It's basically a user's manual for the most complicated thing you'll ever own, your own mind. And it claims you can use it to literally build the life you want.
So, what's the big takeaway? Well, it's this quote right here. Murphy's whole point is that it doesn't really matter what you believe in, what matters is the power of your belief itself. Think about it like this. Your mind is this incredibly powerful servant, and whatever you believe deeply and truly becomes its command. And it doesn't ask questions, it just gets to work. And Murphy has this amazing metaphor for how this all works. He says your mind is always, constantly building your life from a kind of secret blueprint. So who's the architect drawing up those plans? Well, that's you. And the materials you're using? It's your thoughts. And this is where it gets really mind-bending. Murphy's not just talking about, think positive and be happy. No, he's saying there's a direct cause and effect link. Your inner world, your thoughts, your feelings, what you picture in your head, that stuff literally creates your outer world. So if you want to change your life, you don't struggle with the outside stuff. You go straight to the source. You change the thoughts. Okay, here's a perfect little story from the book that shows you exactly what he means. So you've got this university student, right? She desperately wants this expensive bag she just can't afford. But instead of just wishing, she does something different. She affirms, that bag is mine, I accept it mentally. She really feels it. And what happens? That very same evening, her fiancé shows up and gives her the exact bag. According to Murphy, her subconscious got the message and just made it happen. So you're probably asking, okay, but how does this machine inside our heads actually work? Well, Murphy breaks it all down with this really brilliant analogy. He says it's not that we have two separate minds, but one mind that has two very different, very distinct jobs.
So first, let's meet the engine room of the whole operation, your subconscious mind. This is the powerhouse, right? It keeps your heart beating, digests your lunch, all the stuff you never think about. But here's the kicker. Murphy says it's totally impersonal. It's not selective. It doesn't argue, it doesn't debate with you. It just takes orders. And this brings us to his most famous analogy of all. Imagine your mind is a ship. Your conscious mind, that's the captain up on the bridge. The captain analyzes things, makes choices, decides on the destination. The captain gives the orders. But your subconscious mind, that's the crew down in the engine room. They don't question the captain. They just take the orders, your thoughts and beliefs, and faithfully steer the ship of your life exactly where the captain told them to go. But, and this is a huge but, there's a really chilling warning in the book. That crew, they take every single order literally. Get this, there's a story about a father who was so desperate for his daughter to be cured that he'd always say, I would give my right arm to see her cured. Well, one day he gets into a car accident and loses his arm, and his daughter's incurable condition, it vanishes. The subconscious, as Murphy warns us, cannot take a joke. It hears the command and it acts. It doesn't care if it's a good command or a bad one. Okay, so if this subconscious mind is this incredibly powerful but totally impartial engine, how in the world do we make sure we're giving it the right commands? Well, this is where the book gets really practical. Murphy lays out specific techniques to help you bypass that skeptical captain, your conscious mind, and talk directly to the crew. And here's one of his most famous methods. He calls it the sleep technique. It's super simple. First, you get into that sleepy, drowsy state right before you drift off. Then you take whatever it is you want and boil it down to a short, simple phrase. And finally, you just repeat that phrase over and over again, kind of like a lullaby. So why does this work? Well, because in that sleepy state, the captain, your conscious doubting mind, is pretty much off duty. This lets you plant that idea directly into your subconscious without it putting up a fight.
And check out this real-world example from the book. There was a singer who had terrible stage fright, like debilitatingly bad. So 3 times a day, she would just quietly repeat to herself, I sing beautifully, I am poised, serene, confident, and calm. She didn't fight the fear, see? She just fed her subconscious a new, better idea. And after just 1 week, she went out and gave an incredible audition.
Now, you might be thinking this all sounds pretty wild and out there, but what's fascinating is that Murphy's ideas didn't just pop up out of thin air. They're actually part of a much bigger philosophical movement that I've been brewing for like 100 years.
Yeah, his work is basically a cornerstone of something called the New Thought movement. This was a spiritual philosophy that started way back in the 19th century, and its core idea was that our thoughts are an actual creative force, that we can use our minds to heal ourselves and literally create the lives we want to live.
And you can see how this whole thing developed over time. It really started back in the mid 1800s with guys like Phineas Quimby, who was challenging modern medicine and saying, hey, real cures come from a change in the mind. That spark grew into the full-blown New Thought movement, which got so big it was helping with post-war reconstruction after World War I. So, what did Joseph Murphy do in 1963 that was so brilliant? He took all these big, century-old ideas and he packaged them into one simple, super accessible book that just exploded with the public. And all of this brings us to the big central debate that still surrounds this book today. Murphy, for his part, presented all of this as a science of the mind. But is it actually science, or is it something else?
Yeah, if you asked Murphy, he would tell you it's absolutely a science. He argued that your mind operates on fundamental laws, just like chemistry or physics. You mix two chemicals, you get a predictable reaction. He believed the mind was the same. If you use his techniques the right way, he said, you'll get a definite, predictable result from your subconscious mind. Every time. But then you have the critics. People like book reviewer Eli Bendersky look at this and say, hold on a second. They point out that the book is filled with words like prayer and wonders. One of the very first subtitles is wonders happen when you pray effectively. So for them, this isn't science, it's faith, it's religion. The proof is all stories, not controlled scientific studies.
So you've really got these two competing views. On one hand, Murphy's science of mind says there's a universal mental law at work. On the other, the skeptical view says, nah, this is powerful psychological self-help, maybe the placebo effect. But here's what's so interesting. At the end of the day, both sides actually agree on one thing. Belief itself is incredibly powerful. They just have completely different explanations for why.
And that really leaves us with the final big question, doesn't it? Whether you chalk it up to a universal law, a spiritual truth, or just plain old psychology, Murphy's work forces us all to look at our own beliefs in a new light. Maybe our beliefs aren't just passively watching the world go by. Maybe they're actively creating it. And if that's true, the only question left is, what are you going to build with yours?